Spring Veterans in Politics Candidate Forum. I think this is the first of several that is going to be held.
This is the last one.
This is the last one that's being held. In this event, we're going to have our panel interview members, or I'm sorry, candidates for the Ward 2 special election. Before we begin, I would like to ask VIPI Minister George Chehade to lead us in an invocation. Please stand.
Let us pray. Lord, we are so ever mindful of the sacrifices and devotion made by our men and women in uniform all over the world. Help us never take that for granted, protect, and guide them always. We thank you for organizations like Veterans in Politics that defend veteran interests and fight corruption in the political arena in our community. We ask, Lord, for your blessings on today's interviews. We thank you for the candidates that have taken from their time to be here and participate. We ask you to give them a wise mind and a caring heart to make a difference in their political ambitions. Father, please put the right people in these offices that will champion freedom and defend our Constitution. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you all very much. I'd like to thank the Veterans in Politics sponsors who have made this live internet broadcast possible. Fire Rock Steakhouse, which is where we are, and responsible for the fine breakfast spread in the back. How's it taste, kids? Thumbs up? We have approval of the food in the back. Also like to thank Real Water, which has very kindly sponsored our event, and Michael Broadway Realty. Our format today is going to be each panelist taking a turn asking a question. The questions will then be answered by each of the candidates in a 1-minute time frame. We will start with a 2-minute opening statement from each of the candidates. And I guess we'll go in the order in which everyone is sitting up there. So candidate Patsy Brown, if you would please give us a 2-minute statement and let us know who you are. Thank you.
My name is Patsy Brown. I'm running for...
This is my question.
Sorry, no.
It should be green.
No.
Yeah, sure.
Why am I running for City Council Ward 2? I'm running because I believe in living a life of service. I'm running because I believe in the safety of our children, and no parent should have to worry about whether their child will be coming home after a trip to the park because drivers are not paying attention to our pedestrian family and friends. I'm running because I believe in community, and when my neighbors have worked their whole lives to buy their piece of the American dream, it should be protected and not threatened with possibilities of increased property taxes. I'm running because I'm in love with Ward 2. It's like a piece of heaven on earth, or as I usually describe it, a combination of the Palm Desert lifestyle with the beauty of Maui. You can catch the sunrise above Red Rock Canyon on a dewy fall. I'm humbled by the opportunity to serve as a member of City Council and honored to use my experience to tackle the issues of my constituents, which makes them my neighbors, and because of my upbringing, my friends. My campaign promise is that I promise that I will not just listen to the concerns of my constituents, but work with my constituents on those concerns, keeping them involved on every aspect of their issue from beginning to end and to resolve. My campaign promise is that I will do what I've always done, which is start early, stay late, write the emails, make the phone calls, do the work.
Thank you, first of all, for inviting us here for this panel. I'm Victoria Seaman. I'm a wife, a mother. I spent over 23 years in the business sector, which is why I first got into politics. Ward 2 is part of my old Assembly District, Assembly District 34, where I served in 2015 legislative session. I had an open door policy. I worked on issues that were really important to the district. When I ran, I went out and talked to folks and found out what the main issues were. Some of the work I did was the squatter bill, making sure that Metro could investigate squatters. That was really important to our district. The guardianship reform, and also business regulations, overreach of government. Those bills I did bipartisanly. I was also the majority whip. I was also on the Commerce and Labor Committee. My goal is to make sure that I continue to do what I've done since I was elected, which is have an open door and phone and listen to the concerns of the constituents in Ward 2. Primary concern right now is crime and safety. That is the job of the City Council, and I will continue to have an open door policy and serve the constituents of Ward 2. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Victoria. Can I stand up?
Sure.
My name is Bruce Feher. I'm a former business owner. Right now I'm semi-retired, which means I work mostly for my wife and grandchildren. I have plenty of time on my hands now, something that I did not have when I was working 60 and 80-hour weeks. I'm almost 23-year resident of Las Vegas and over a 20-year resident of Ward 2. I'm an Army veteran. I was honorably discharged. There are many issues facing our community. They're pretty basic, some of them are a little more involved. Quality of life, crime, public safety, water, the Badlands, education, homelessness, and drugs among them. Economic development is essential. We cannot always rely on the casinos to do all the heavy lifting. So we need to make a strong effort to promote our advantages, to make Nevada a viable and diverse business center, and do that as soon as we can. Finding clean manufacturing, high-tech service companies to locate or relocate will be a top priority. I understand the importance of the small business owners. I know that the paperwork and burdensome rules, regulations, and ordinances can be a problem for them, or for me. It's cornerstone issues like everyday housekeeping chores or in the city can't be overlooked either. Traffic control signs need to be spruced up. Any street crosswalks, stripes could use a fresh coat of paint. Traffic lights at high volume intersections need to be installed. And trees need to be trimmed back. I drive around the county a lot. And in the residential neighborhoods, every day I see branches hanging over a tree that's blocking a stop sign. Seems like a simple issue, but people can get hurt and kids can get hurt also. And of course, residential speeding in my little subdivision, they're booking. I've talked to the person who we're trying to replace, and nothing ever happened. Also, as your council person, I would work with the Regional Transportation Commission to extend the public bus system beyond 215. This will offer opportunities to people throughout the city to come and do housework and things like that for the more affluent of our neighbors. Empty promises are not my style. While I can't guarantee that I can solve all problems, I do promise that I will listen to residents' concerns and treat them with courtesy and respect. Being elected to the City Council will not be a stepping stone for me. There are no ambitions for higher office beyond the city limits. I have no interest in using the office for business opportunities or to seek favors for or from special interest groups. My primary commitment will be to the residents of Ward 2 and the cities of Las Vegas. We can do better when we work together. Thank you.
Is that mic on?
Mm-hmm. I just have to speak closer to it.
Is it on?
Push the button. Should be green.
Is it green?
I don't see any colors.
Oh. Cool.
Yeah, what did you do?
I'm from New York.
Hi, I'm Valerie Weber. This is Dr. Valerie Weber. I am a 29-year resident of the state of Nevada. Love it here. And in Ward 2, I've lived here for 22 years. I love our city, and go Knights go, I had to get that one in. I have spent a lifetime serving the community in different ways, whether on a nonprofit board or teaching our students over at CSN. I teach business, and I teach what's called the art and the heart of business. You have to have the heart first before we go into business, and along the way, you need to have the processes in place to run a great business. So I look forward to bringing those aspects to Ward 2 for the special election coming up on June 11th. Along the way as well, we have 3 priorities that we would like to see in this particular ward, or our ward, our home. Safer neighborhoods, better jobs, and improved city government. We've seen that from talking with residents that the #1 concern is crime, and the aspects that go with that, including home invasions, theft, and burglaries in the neighborhood. I'm on several social media sites, and the #1 complaint, even as Bruce had said, is people recklessly driving through neighborhoods where kids are at risk, and we need to make sure that our families are safe, because that's why they moved to Ward 2, because we are the gateway to Red Rock, which is like the coolest ward I think called. I guess they're all great, and all the city of Las Vegas is great as a whole. Better jobs. We have a global city. People come from all over the world to set up businesses in our area. And I have one of my very, very best friends lives in Taipei, and she works with the Chinese American community here to see about bringing more jobs and more businesses. So we need to be very efficient and effective in how we deal with our international folks, besides local businesses that would like to either start up or enhance their growth in their business. So growth is very, very important for our businesses, as well as for jobs in our neighborhoods. We have our next generation coming up that is going to be needing jobs with our local businesses, and that is an area that we need to grow. City government needs to be very business friendly along the way, so that we can have that economic security for our families in our neighborhoods. And then looking at improved city government, that's the 3rd prong that we're taking a look at. And the city should work for you, it should work for all of us. It's not the other way around. And that's what it seems sometimes. And we who live in the city of Las Vegas pay higher property taxes to begin with, so those services should go along with it. So along the way, that's where we're taking a look, is in talking with neighbors, they are saying that the #1 concern is safety in our neighborhoods, and better jobs and improved city government. So, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Sanson, we've had a 5th candidate show up. Do you want to put him up on the DS 2-minute introduction? Mr. Plaster, if you would please grab, I guess, this chair here. There's still 5 chairs up there. Is there a chair down there?
Put him over there.
He's got you. He's got you. Okay.
I think it's the chair.
Thank you for that. Perfect. Okay, Mr. Plaster, if you would give us a 2-minute introduction of who you are, and then we'll get underway with our questions from our panel.
Okay, I'm Richard Plaster. I've lived in Las Vegas since 1973. I'm a home builder. I built Signature Homes, which is we built 12,500 houses throughout the Las Vegas Valley. A couple thousand of those are in Ward 2. I lived in Ward 2 for 25 years. I've been involved in a number of institutions there. My wife and I our son was one of the first students in Meadow School. We actually built, when they had their previous campus down on Fletcher Jones property, we actually built the first buildings. My 4-year-old grandson will be the 6th member of our family to go to the Meadow School in Ward 2. My wife had been co-chairman of the Nevada Ballet Theater for about 25 years. That's located right in the middle of Ward 2. I've been on that board for over 20 years myself. I've also been a founder of the Las Vegas Philharmonic. We were there at the beginning on that board for was a founder with my wife at the Smith Center. If you go into the Smith Center, the seventh name on that is mine. I've been there. I was on the committee that chose the architect, chose the contractor. I've been on the finance committee of that institution and on the board since the beginning. Still very actively involved in it. I'm also on the finance committee of the Nevada Ballet Theater. I've been involved with a number of voluntary groups. I was assigned by the city to be on one of their reviews of the fire department. I've worked with the Las Vegas Valley Water District several times. I had taken some, I'm also a previous past president of the Southern Nevada Home Builders. And when I was there, that was when we outlawed or we encouraged the outlawing of wood burning fireplaces because, as you know, air pollution is a significant issue here. I also started an infrastructure committee that I appointed Valerie Weber to head, and that inspired Bruce Woodbury to start the 215. And didn't want a private sector company or entity doing that, and so the county took over, and that's why we got the 215. I'm sure it would have happened anyway, but at least I had some little play in that. And that's kind of what my background is. Thank you. Oh, I guess I should say, why am I concerned about the city? Well, I think if you look at what's happened in City Hall just even in the last week, I think there's room for somebody who's had business experience and someone who has mature judgment to be in that room right now. And that's why I think I could serve usefully. Thank you.
Okay. The microphone is down at the Tom Bush end of the panel table, so it sounds like we should start with Tom Bush.
Sounds good. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tom Bush. I'm an officer with Veterans in Politics International, the born out of the Bush family. It's a pleasure to meet you all.
Mr. Bush, let me interrupt briefly. Candidates, you'll get 60 seconds to answer the question that he poses. At 50 seconds, where there's 10 seconds left, I will hold up my hand that you'll see out of the corner of your eye. I wish it was red and flashing, but this is all you get. Carry on, sir. Thank you.
Anyway, I'm just glad we're all here. I want to thank you all for taking the time to show up today. It shows you care about our veterans, and that's what interests us the most here. Speaking of veterans, as you're aware, the suicide rate is unacceptable. If they say 22 a day, but that's just the figure they give. It's much higher, I guarantee it. In our community, a lot of the basic needs are not met the way they should. And I know this because I've been involved in a couple different groups that actually hit the streets and found out in the homeless community. And we were able to successfully find veterans and take them off the streets and rural housing. Now, as a city council person, what would you do to coordinate with some of these groups that are already doing great things that are severely underfunded, like the Home Deployment Project and Veterans Village? Thank you. This is for everybody.
So let's go in the opposite order, and where's the microphone? We'll start with Ms. Weber, and we'll pass the microphone up that side.
Thank you for the question, Tom. To me, the greatest strength that we have is being in a coalition, and that's private-public partnerships. And having recently driven through the downtown corridor, going down Main toward that area, I had to be reminded that this problem is real, and it's daily, and it's happening right now, even though we're sitting up here in the Northwest. And I will make it a priority to assure that we are tackling this folks who have served our country and now live in a way that I can't imagine on a daily basis needs our advocacy as well as our support. And I will do what I can to bring those coalitions together to move forward and push those suicide rate and homelessness back.
Thank you. I remind candidates, that you cannot get too close to these microphones.
Oh. Is that too close?
No, you cannot get too close.
Okay.
You don't have to be too far away from these microphones.
In other words, put it close.
Put it close. Mr. Feher, we can hear you. Fire away.
I'm a veteran. While I had a home and a roof over my head, many of my brothers and sisters and aunts, and I find that totally unacceptable in a country that they have served. Many of them have been wounded. Many of them have lost friends. One of the most difficult times in my life was at the war. I saw the first name of one of the gentlemen that I served in basic training with. I left. I didn't want to see any more. And now for these men and women to come back to one of the richest countries of the world, to a city that has some of the wealthiest corporations and citizens in the world, and to be living out of a Smith's push culture is totally unacceptable. I don't have one answer. I don't have a magic wand. I do know there are lots of different associations working together, and I will do everything to work with them and see if we could not coordinate a very effective program to help these people. Thank you.
It's out again? Okay. I think the battery might be low.
Victoria Seaman. No, I think it's good. Try it.
Hello? No.
Is the green light on?
No.
You have a commanding presence, it's fine.
All right, I'll just speak without it. You can, yeah, because, oh, with the mic?
I think so.
Hello? Okay, let me just speak. All right. First of all, I want to preface by saying my husband's a veteran, my father's a veteran, and my grandfather's a veteran. And so I fully understand issues of veterans. I have the endorsement of Nevada Veterans Alliance because of the work that I've done with them. In the 2015 session, we were awarded the session that had done the most for veterans. So I think it's important that this be a front issue. I've worked with Arnold Stock with the Veterans Village. I will continue to work with him on this issue because it's important. I've taken the Safe Talk class, which I will encourage everyone to take. I learned so much in that class. It's really important that as a community, we come together and encourage other people to understand the signs of the suicide in this state and in our country. So thank you for the question.
Can I just nod? Is it working? It's not really working. Okay. So it's a little bit of telephone because it was a minute other people have spoken, but twofold question. First of all, I work as a contract analyst, so my job primarily is to find funding, usually federal, state government, for private entities and individuals. So regarding veterans, any issues with mental health, what I do now is I bid on RFPs and things of that nature. So I do a matching game. So if there's lots of funding, then people just don't know that because they're not doing that type of match. Actually, primarily. I've been very successful with the United States Postal Service. I have to say my best guys for the past 12 years have been my vets. I mean, they show up and they, show out. They're reliable, they're dependable, all things. So as far as the economics of helping that type of situation, it would be contract locating funding because at the end of the day, it's about finding financing. Mental health, that's another issue.
Tested, 1, 2, tested.
It's working perfect.
I am not a vet, but I grew up with one. My father was a career Air Force and served in World War II and lost his fingers on one hand. So I have some direct empathetic sense of what it is to serve. My best friend is a former Ranger who did the Vietnam service, and so I've had a lot of that type of exposure, and I kind of lived through the Vietnam War in a very real way. I think it is horrible the way our country has treated veterans. The suicide thing seems to be a problem that is national, of great scope, and I don't really have any solution for that. But I have been impressed with the issue of homelessness, and it affects veterans disproportionately. that the housing first initiatives that we've seen in some cities seem to be making a significant headway. You get somebody into a place, and then social services can be available to them. And I think that's the exploration that the city should be making, and I think we have the budget to make some inroads on housing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Our second questioner is Nathan Atkins, a veteran of the Army, and a businessman. Sir?
Hi. So my question is this, the city of Las Vegas is pushing forward with becoming a city, right? And that means bringing businesses outside of gaming, transportation, gaming and construction, right? So what is your plan to make downtown more business friendly and improve transportation? Because obviously those at the lower end of the economic scale don't have cars or they need to get to work to get jobs. So what is your plan to bring business into downtown and improve transportation?
So let's start with Mr. Plaster and come back down in the opposite direction.
Transportation is an issue I have studied for some time. I've had the opportunity of going around the world. I'm fortunate enough to be able to travel, and I've seen congestion rings in Stockholm, and the same thing in London. Most recently I was in Singapore, and that's kind of, if I was concerned with improving the quality of traffic flow, I think Singapore has done a phenomenal job. But it's very difficult, politically it's very difficult, because effectively you're restricting the number of vehicles on the roads. You're taxing drivers to subsidize mass transit. And that, unfortunately, is the solution that will work. A lot of the things that we have tried so far don't work. And you can see imposition of things like increased gasoline taxes cause crises. I mean, France is falling basically because of that. So this is a very complicated problem. As far as what it makes to make the city go, I think they just have to expedite their processing of applications from businesses. That would help quite a bit.
I think maybe we should look at different options, other options of transportation. I know I've traveled extensively, and depending on where you go in the world, bicycles are more used. I know in California they have a new thing about the scooters, so you can go on the corners. What's the point? We need to create more types of transportation that are more available to the more common person's budget. Everyone can afford Uber. And a lot of people, Uber is expensive. Lyft, Uber, it's expensive, especially even, at 5 Mile Drive, that could be someone's, budget that they just can't afford it. But there's different types of transportation that we can definitely consider. We don't have the biking, motorcycle situation that they have around most stadiums when you travel outside of Las Vegas. I know when I was in Denver.
So I like what we're doing downtown with these partnerships with Zappos and other industries and businesses, and bringing them down and being a supportive branch of government for building our city. What's also important is not stifling them, but encouraging them, which is one of the things that I learned when I was in Carson City, and a board was shutting down a little business because they weren't teaching the things in a post-secondary education school that they wanted. So by changing the law, they have now expanded from 2,000 square feet of a business to 11,000 square feet. I don't have time to get into the story, but doing things like that to encourage businesses to prosper rather than stifling them. And then we can also look at other transportation, and how we do that is we have a cohesive council with the mayor so that we can all work together to get things done. So that's my idea. I'm out of time.
You broke it again.
I did.
I think we need to look at Las Vegas in a different way. Right? The city, the state, the county, they offer incentives, bribes to corporations to relocate here. Right? I think that money would be better spent on our educational system and on our teachers. But business needs a reason to come. And we need to find what that reason is. Commissions and committees redevelopment boards. I tried to find out how many redevelopment organizations there are. It's something at the bottom. And it was a task. All right? We live in the convention capital of the world. I would encourage the city of Las Vegas to be able to get a booth at every one of these conventions, every one of these trade shows, and have whoever representatives are available to work for them. When you meet the people from these companies around town, hey, I'm Bruce. I'm a city councilman.
In teaching business at CSN, I teach my students about the heart and the art of business. So we look at that in the context of the city of Las Vegas as a whole. So we have residents, we have businesses, we have government. And what I try to do and how I try to teach is we look at the horizontals and the verticals. And we take a look over time that the very first businesses that were here surrounded gaming. And that seems to be the leader in so much what we do, whether it's on the strip in unincorporated Clark County or downtown. That's where those businesses started when we brought gambling here in 1931. And then the dam was finished in 1935. And we have to take a look at the context of the whole to find out where we've been, to know where we're headed. So I would say overall, I have been to the downtown project, and I appreciate that Tony Chehade brought that idea and spent about $350 million. Let's keep working to make it even bigger and better.
If you've just joined us online, you've tuned into the Veterans in Politics International City of Las Vegas Ward 2 special election debates, where we have candidates Richard Plaster, Patsy Brown, Victoria Seaman, Bruce Feher, and Valerie Weber, taking questions from our panel of volunteer veterans. The event is sponsored by Fire Rock Steakhouse, Real Water, and Michael Broadway Realtors. Our format is a 1-minute response to a 1-minute question, and I will hold my hand up at 50 seconds into that 1 minute, which gives you 10 seconds remaining. I would also tell our candidates that you cannot be heard on the internet unless you hold that microphone up to your mouth. It's bigger than just this room here, so make sure you hold that microphone close. Our third panel question is coming from Army veteran Burke Hall.
My question is a very important one for the city. We've talked about the legitimacy of the city, but corruption is what the city was founded in, and for some reason it still seems to linger. We can't be a city. It's a big town, but it's a small town. Everyone seems to know each other here, but it's like we've been married 3 times and still got the same in-laws. They're all inbred, and the theme song to Deliverance is playing at the freaking county courthouse. Yeah, I'm the elegant. What are we going to do about the blatant corruption that's going on at DFS, school system? I mean, in our city government, that hinders and harms families here. Because family is the unit of society. It's the basic unit of society. What are we going to do about the corruption so that we're an actual legitimate city?
Let's start, I guess, with Victoria in the middle, since we started at both ends, one at a time.
Perfect.
And then we'll kind of work our way back, bouncing to the ends of the table.
Can you hear me? Well, first of all, it's not just with DFS. We've had the most embarrassing year in Nevada with corruption in politics. And I can tell you, we must be a joke across the nation with how many resignations have we seen over the last few years. I just want to commend the FBI for doing a great job and continue to encourage people to speak out, because I think that's what's important. I also think on a state level and the city level, stiffer penalties. I mean, shame on politicians for what they're a public servant. We have forgotten that we are public servants, and there is no place for corruption in Nevada or anywhere else. So I just want to say I'm really happy that these people have been exposed, and I hope that if there are more, that they will come out very soon, and people will understand that we are going to prosecute for corruption. So thank you for that question. That's a great question.
A deck of cards. Every casino that has poker or card games changes that deck every so often. We've been having the same deck of politicians in this town for a long time. No offense meant to my colleagues here. But maybe it's time to get someone who's not connected to the establishment. Someone from the outside, an outsider, to look into these things. As a former private investigator, I got a nose for stuff like that. I do not like corruption. Just as we have, if you drive through a construction zone in town, double penalties for speeding. I think if you are a politician, you should get double penalties for whatever corrupt acts you commit. Thank you.
Corruption. As a lawyer, I have no understanding for anything that's against the law, of course. And as I tell most people that come to me with various issues and problems, we have to change it on the books. We can be upset, we can be offended, all of the things. But if you really want things changed, we have to change the law. It means we have to write bills. We have to change what's on the books. And it can be done. We should do the work.
I've been around this town a long time, and I can't say that it seems to me to be any worse than it was in the beginning. Quite frankly, I think it has improved. At least we're catching people now. Back in the past, there were stories, and any of you have been around here 20, 30, 40 years, and you've heard the stories. And I think things have actually gotten better. Lights are being shined on areas. Big people are going down who it's inconceivable could have gone down even 5 or 10 years ago. And so I think we're making some progress. I can't say that the city's been leading the way in that specific respect, but I think it can, and I kind of agree with one of the previous panelists. Sometimes you need a change in the political outlook, not keep electing people who are professional politicians, but get people who've done something outside politics.
I first came to Las Vegas in 1990, and I was the technical director for United Blood Services. My job was to make sure the blood supply was safe. Along the way, we were looking at a way to expand services in the clinical sciences for the residents, and that involved putting a bone marrow laboratory together. I found, since I worked in Texas previously, I had approached a gal to set up a bone marrow laboratory who was at Methodist Hospital in Houston. Her husband worked in the area of financial services, and she goes, "Oh, I'm so excited, this is a great opportunity." She talked to her husband, and the next day she called me back crying. She goes, "Valerie, I can't come to your city." And I said, "Why? You were so excited yesterday." She goes, "Because the image of the city is that there's corruption. And I lost a good employee for the residents here in order to, we need to overcome this. And the image needs to change, and there's evidence that we need to look at in order to overcome it."
Our panelists will be meeting after the debate to vote on an endorsement. Is that correct, Steve? That is correct. Excuse me. As the moderator, I am not participating in that endorsement process. Yes, sir?
Just a quick comment that isn't political, I don't think. Prime TV has a documentary on it called Mafia West, Vegas, baby. And I've been watching that, and a lot of what the gentleman down there said is true. It goes through the history of Las Vegas, very interesting, at Prime TV.
And a colorful history. Our next panelist with the question is going to be George Chehade, who is the Veterans of Politics International Minister. Sir.
Thank you all for coming today. Thank you for Saturday morning and joining us. I have a general question. I wanted to ask you, what are 2 things you would say would be that you're most passionate about concerning Ward 2?
Oh, let's start with Valerie and work our way down that way, and then for the fifth question, we'll start down that way and work our way back.
The two things I am passionate about, number one, my neighbors. I've lived in my same neighborhood for 22 years. I know every neighbor, we get together. I've got all flavors of political parties, it doesn't matter, we're neighbors first. And to me, that is truly, in a city of this size and has grown, doubled in size since I've been here, that is very, very important to me that we know our neighbors. Along with that comes public safety. We need to feel safer in our neighborhoods as well as walking our dogs and whatnot. And so those are two things that are very, very close to my heart. And as I said earlier, I monitor social media regarding what's going on in our own neighborhoods. And we had a terrible situation that just happened involving our little furry friends. And so my two goals from the get-go are to make sure that we have those quality neighborhood conversations as well as beat back crime, creepy crime as I call it.
Water, crime. It's not going to do any good growing like crazy unless we take care of the water situation. I'm amazed. My friends in Nebraska are up to their eyeballs in water. We have none. Yet there are thousands of miles of gas pipelines crisscrossing this country. You think someone could develop one to bring water from Nebraska to us? The pipeline from Alaska down to us is basically doing nothing. Lots of water up in Alaska. As for crime, I would like to see more patrols in my neighborhood. I've lived in my house over 20 years. I can count on one hand the time I saw a patrol car on the street. If you call them, they'll come. I would like to see the officers get out and talk to the kids. My grandchildren play and their friends play in front of our house, and it would be nice if the patrolman would say, "Hi kids, how you doing?" Give them a hug. Right? Another thing that I would like to see. Stay tuned.
Okay, so I'm passionate about solving problems and getting things done. I'm passionate about people and listening to their issues. When I ran for the assembly, I walked my district 3 times and listened to issues that I didn't even know about. And when I got to Carson City, exactly what the issues were are the exact issues that I made sure that I worked as hard as I could to get past. And that was the squatter issue, the guardianship issue of seniors that were being abused, and cutting some of those unnecessary overreach regulations. I will do the same in the city council. I have walked the district, I continue to walk the district, and the #1 issue is crime. And yes, we did have a dog who was killed in our neighborhood. I went over and I met with the guy, and I helped him to put out flyers so that we could catch this perpetrator who's been killing dogs for 5 years. It's about getting the community together, and it's about listening to people, and that is my passion.
Ward 2. Well, my #1 is pedestrian safety. I don't know how many gray hairs I have gotten worrying about my kids walking literally from our house, our community, just to Albertsons, which is maybe 5 or 6 miles. At least twice a week on the evening news, we see or hear about some child getting hit and drugged. Not just hit, but drugged by a car. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I worked way too hard to move over in this area, to feel safe, to walk the dogs with the lizard on the shoulder, the kids to the bus, all the things. To be so worried about, are my kids gonna make it home from school? And it's literally like one strip from like the park and crossing over. We need more signs, we need more lights, we need more signals. Thank you.
In talking to potential constituents, I do find crime to be the one issue that seems to resonate, and it's certainly something that we need to pay an awful lot of attention to. Another that I personally am interested in is transportation. As a former Angelino, I am struck with sort of the increase in traffic loads that we're having. I'm a hiker. I go out to Calico Basin and Red Rock quite often. Last time I came out, could make a left-hand turn on Calico onto 159 Charleston. It took 6 minutes. I actually counted it there. So I mean, we've got some major issues that are adjacent to Ward 2. On the crime front, this is a very complicated issue. As a home builder, I created a number of neighborhood watch groups, and those can help because we all have to be involved in that issue. With respect to crime and traffic, because there seems to be virtually no enforcement of traffic rules, I think we need to divide Metro into 2 chunks, one purely traffic oriented.
Veterans in Politics would like to thank the 5 candidates for the Ward 2 special election who are here with us today. From the last speaker moving this direction toward me, we have Richard Plaster, Patsy Brown, Seaman, Bruce Feher, and Valerie Weber. It takes a lot of guts, frankly, to stand up and run for office. I've done it 1 or 2 times myself, so I'd like to thank you. One of our panelists has actually taken the plunge and stood for office. He's our final questioner. His name is Danny Vella, who has been a candidate for Henderson City Council.
Okay, so all of you have mentioned crime as your top priority, and I agree with you. Now, as a council member, though, you don't have direct control over crime prevention. So what steps do you plan to take to create crime prevention programs or to increase police work and such in your ward?
You're right, the City Council has limited control. Basically, it's budgetary control, which is relatively limited. It's in the hands of the sheriff. Basically, the City Council can lobby the sheriff on that, and that's kind of basically what we can do. With respect to the issue that I talked about, and I know other panelists are concerned about this, is observance of traffic rules on local streets. And that doesn't really happen because, quite frankly, there's a higher priority to finding the people who steal dogs or beat people up. It's hard to separate those two. To my mind, where it works best, if you have a totally different traffic authority, that could even be increasing the Nevada Highway Patrol's responsibilities, or dividing Metro so that they didn't have that dual responsibility where I cannot imagine a sheriff ever saying, bust that guy for going 50 miles an hour into 25 miles home. Well, I've got a murderer over there we're trying to chase. That's an impossible task.
For me, I'm more of a pay it forward, one person at a time type philosophy, and I say that because I use an app. It's called Nextdoor Casetas, and it's a way that I'm actually in touch with people in my community within, I think, a 15-mile radius that I normally wouldn't be in touch with. But I think getting involved with your neighbors, telling them about the different programs, making, a weekly, community get-together at someone's house, maybe a car game, just really getting everyone back involved. And that whole theory of it kind of takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to raise a community as well.
Thank you. I think as a city council person, there is a lot that we can do, and that's first by, again, having that relationship with Metro, because as Mr. Plaster said, we have budgetary involvement, but we don't, have as much involvement. But I think the relationship is the important thing, and the awareness, as we talked about in my little neighborhood, and my neighbor happens to be Joe Lombardo, and we had 6 burglaries in a month, and this was back in September. And so bringing that awareness and bringing Metro into our community to actually come in and talk about with neighbors how to be safe, and I think that is where, as a city council person, we can help. Again, it's the relationships that we have with Metro and having those people. When I meet folks that say, I'd really like to be more involved, I get them set up with the neighborhood watch. So there are things that we can do, and just getting them in touch with the right people. Thank you.
More bike or scooter patrols along our beautiful walking paths. If you go out there at night, you better really go. Right? Update and promote the neighborhood watch programs and coordinate various neighborhood watches. Grants for individual communities. I live in Westbrook, a small community within Harvest. Grants for closed circuit TV systems.
Mr. Feher, will you please use the microphone?
Is it working?
It is.
It is? I can't hear it. Okay. Another thing that I've been looking at, I was involved with for some time, are blimps, observation blimps. You can tether them, they can go up the higher they go up, the more view they have. They don't run out of fuel, they don't have to have a pilot land, because they don't have to go to the bathroom. They can stay on station for a very, very long time, and then get the equipment, all sorts of surveillance equipment. Thank you.
I'm going to think way outside of any sort of confines of what government currently does, but I like to triangulate a lot of discussions, and I thought, you know what, for all the fire stations we have, why are there not equal presence of police? So that at every fire station there could be the presence of police, and then you have coalitions of neighbors that get together, and then there's this conversation that happens constantly. So let me just suggest something of that nature. I know that when I was previously in public office, about 10 years ago, I suggested it at that time, and it just makes sense. And I understand there's different layers of monies and resources and whatnot, but we need to think a little more creatively to make it safe for the neighbors. The neighbors are the ones paying for government, so let's think a little more creatively.
Okay, I'd like to thank our candidates for the City of Las Vegas Ward 2 special election. Starting at the camera's left, I think, Valerie Weber, Bruce Feher, Victoria Seaman, Patsy Brown, and Richard Plaster. Would also further like to thank our volunteer panel today, Tom Bush, Nathan Atkins, Burke Hall, George Chehade, and Danny Vella. The five of you are now going to convene and decide who is going to get the Veterans in Politics endorsement this year. Good luck, and thank you for turning out on a Saturday morning. Thank you at home for watching on the internet. And we will end with each candidate's final 2-minute statement. Who's going first? No volunteers. All right, Valerie, you're up.
Thanks for coming out today, and thank you for your service to our country. I did not say that at the beginning, and my thoughts are as sincere now as I thought at that time. I am so excited. I love to serve folks, and I had served previously, which I did not say in my opening statement, in the state legislature, and it takes a lot of creativity to be a problem solver, as someone on the panel has already stated. And thinking of different ways and listening to perspectives of folks in the district, to me, make all the difference in the world. To understand all the sides of an issue before rendering a decision is something that I really treasure, and I've been somewhat successful, I would say, during the course of my time that I spent in public office. I would love to do it again. I enjoy serving people. I love to contribute to the city that I love. Vegas is strong. We need to fix a few things, but you know, it's playing what's called the infinite game. Is how do we gain in the midst of this continuously changing landscape? So thank you very much.
I noticed no one asked about the Badlands. Mr. Beers knows a lot about the Badlands, and I've learned a lot from him. We're facing a potential $250 million lawsuit. Anyone who lives in the city of Las Vegas is going to have to call for it. Now, I don't know the ins and the outs, but I think the city should cut bait, get away from this issue, and let the two feuding parties duke it out. Now, there are over 500,000 elected officials nationwide, state, local, federal. There are 25 million, 30 million government workers at all levels. There are so many rules, regulations, ordinances, statutes, no one knows how many there are. This is supposed to be a free country. Right? This is supposed to be a prosperous country. This is supposed to be a safe country. You would think with the 500,000 plus elected officials and all of the government employees that we would be living in utopia.
Thank you. Again, thank you for your service, and thank you for being here. And I'm running because it's important to me. My community is important to me. During the last few months, before Councilman Soroka resigned, lots of folks in the community reached out to me with their unhappiness of Ward 2, and it wasn't being represented fully. They felt that only a few folks were being represented. I stepped up to the plate months ago, and I'm here now to fight for those people in Ward 2 and to make sure that their issues are all, and concerns are all heard, not just a portion of Ward 2, but all of it. And so that's why I'm running. I love people, I love public service, and I love getting things done. So thank you very much for having me here today.
Just a closing statement. I'm running again because I just want to feel safe in my area. I want to be able to walk my dogs. I want to be able to walk with my kids without the coyote fear and issues. I'm running because I don't want to call a politician's phone line and not get answered, or send an email and not get the response I want. So I figured, well, let me run because I know I will get the job done, and I won't have to depend on anyone else in regards to my issues in my area about public safety. Thank you.
Las Vegas is my adopted home. I've been here 43 years. I have 3 children here and 3 grandchildren. I feel very much vested in the community. I think it's been a phenomenal place. So when I first got here, I was wondering, could I really be devoting my career to a place that's dependent upon tourism, because I thought that was rather fickle. I had the opportunity of being in a place, I visited Venice, Italy, and I saw that town had been around for 500 years, the last 400 of which it really had no economic raison to exist.